Alright boys, welcome back to another video. Thunder Alley here. Tonight we're going to be previewing the Denver Broncos game this Thursday. So by the time you're watching this, we could be talking about it being less than 24 hours away. This is without question the biggest game of the Chargers season. They've now dropped two straight against the Chiefs and the Bucks, and we saw them of course barely escape the Atlanta Falcons. The Chargers are 8-6. If they win two of their next three games, they go to the playoffs. Of course, the Chargers have to get there, so we'll talk about it in this one. I did actually watch the Bucks game. I just never made a video on it. I'll talk briefly about it right now. I don't think this says too much about the Chargers. I think it just says more about the Bucks. The Bucks are red hot. They're absolutely on fire on both sides of the ball, and the Chargers just happen to run into them. Of course, there's a lot of work to do, clearly. When you give up 40 points in your own building, nobody's going to be happy about it. But this is a bounce back opportunity for Los Angeles to be at home against the Broncos, a team that they beat last time they played. In Denver, offensively, they had been pretty good up until last week when the Colts were able to neutralize them. Now, the Chargers have a significantly better defense than the Colts, and we saw the Colts hold Bo Nix to just 130 passing yards. He did rush for 23, but 3 touchdowns, 3 picks. One of them came late when this game was already a blowout. He was not necessarily under the most amount of pressure. The Colts only rushed 4. They drop 7 back into coverage. They play cover 2. Yeah, the Colts play mostly cover 2. The Chargers, they play a bunch of different defenses. They like to dial up pressure. They will drop back into zone coverage. They like to play through their defensive backs. But they're going to come after Bo Nix. They're going to send pressure at him and make him make plays. But I'm not too concerned with the Chargers defense. Even after what happened against the Bucks, I still think their defense is going to handle business against the Broncos. My concern comes from the Chargers offense, as it has all year. This offense is it's pretty close for me to wanting to call it just flat out bad. Justin Herbert is far from the problem. It's been the lack of playmakers, lack of run game, creativity, offensive line. Herbert, like I said, against the Chiefs, he did miss a couple of big throws, but against the Bucks, he just didn't even have a chance. I mean, how many times was he sacked? It was pretty crazy. I'm gonna pull this score up because Herbert, it felt like he was getting sacked like every other play. He was only sacked 3 times, but he was under constant pressure. Herbert, you've got to give him a chance out there to let his receivers get open. We know we could throw it in a tight windows. And Lad McConkey, 5 for 50, a touchdown. Quentin Johnson, 5 for 45 and a touchdown. Stone Smart, 5 for 50. Did lose a fumble late, but of course, Will Disley, I don't know if he's going to play this Thursday, but hopefully he does. The Chargers are going to need him. But yeah, the Chargers offense just never had a chance. Early on in this game, the Chargers, they went into halftime with a 17-13 to start this game, and then in the second half they got outscored 27-0. They didn't score and they couldn't get a stop. The Bucks actually didn't even punt once in this game. It's Tuesday when I'm recording this. I watched this game like days ago, of course, so I'm trying to recall. But the Bucks, they didn't punt. They did turn the ball over a couple of times, and of course they had the last possession where they're not going to try to run it up. But outside of that, they scored every single possession, and we're talking about 223 rushing yards, 288 passing yards. But I don't think the Chargers will give this up again the rest of the year, including the playoffs. They were the number 1 ranked defense coming into the week, like I said. It's just from an offensive standpoint, there's a lot of work to do. They're without J.K. Dobbins, who was, arguably their best playmaker early on in the season. And then you take a look at their receivers. Well, I don't think they're the worst in the world. I don't think they're the best, but they don't even have a chance to get open. Herbert's not able to hold on to the ball. If you give Herbert another second and a half, we're talking about a sack or an incomplete pass versus a big-time play. And we saw that against the Chiefs in the second half where Herbert, he was given time and he was able to just shred the shell defense that the Chiefs were in. But in terms of this Thursday game, it's just going to come down to which Denver Broncos team ends up showing up and which Los Angeles Charger team shows up. They're both coming off of I'm not going to say the Broncos are coming off of a difficult game because they won. It was a big win. The Chargers are, but it's just two teams that had big games at home. One of them won, one of them lost. Do the Broncos get complacent, or do they just come out aggressively and try to take out the Chargers? I have mixed feelings about this game. I think the Broncos are playing better football, but I think the Chargers need this game. And I do think that the potential of these two teams clashing, the Chargers have the advantage because of their quarterback. They've got Harbaugh, and Sean Payton's a hell of a coach. But the Chargers, I just believe that they realize they need this game. They can't afford to lose it. I mean, if you lose a home game against the Broncos, you lose the tiebreaker, and now all of a sudden you need to win one of your next two to make the playoffs. And even if the Chargers do that, they lose this game Thursday and they win their next two, well, you're facing Kansas City or Buffalo, which arguably are the two hardest teams in football to beat. The Chiefs, all the help they've received the past couple of seasons from the officiating, they'd be at home. The Bills, Josh Allen's having one of the most dynamic seasons in NFL history at the quarterback position. I mean, the last two games he's got 10 touchdowns and like 1,000 yards, or maybe not 800 yards, or I think it's like actually I think it's like 850 or something. But that's just crazy. So it's very important the Chargers win this game. You don't want to get the seventh seed. I mean, I don't think any Chargers fan would complain about making the playoffs. I mean, that would have been the best case scenario coming into the year in season one of Jim Harbaugh. But if you have a chance to get out of the seventh seed, you've got to be all in, all chips on the table. The sixth seed would be traveling to Pittsburgh right now. The seventh seed would be traveling to Buffalo and Orchard Park. I mean, that's maybe the biggest disadvantage for an opposing team in football. I know Denver is like it snows there, they've got the mountains, but Buffalo, that's just not a place you want to go to. Honestly, I'd rather see the Broncos go to Kansas City in Missouri than I would them go to Orchard Park. It's just not where you want to be. Like if you're the seventh seed in the NFC, you're taking on the Eagles, who Eagles are very good, but the Bills are not a team you want to play right now. I know their defense has been giving up a lot of points, but the Chargers, they're not going to be able to keep up with the Bills' offense. There's just no way in hell. They'd have to have their defense put just together a masterclass, but it is asking too much at the end of the day. So, yeah, I would like to see the Chargers go out there and find a way to prevail in this game. They've got an 87% chance to make the playoffs, but if they lose this one, it's going to go down drastically. If they beat the Broncos go to 9-6. And if Denver actually does lose their next two games, they're at Cincinnati and then they're at home against Kansas City, and the Bengals win out. Well, the Bengals, guys, they're going to the playoffs. So the Broncos, even though this game doesn't seem as important as it does for the Chargers, the Broncos really can't afford to lose this as well, because then they're in jeopardy of losing to the Bengals and missing the playoffs. And then of course, the Chargers, if the Chargers lose out and the Bengals win out, well, the Bengals, they would just take the Chargers spot. So the Chargers are far from a lock, man. But if they get this game at home against Denver, it's going to give them a lot of cushion, because at that point, they've only got to win one of their next two. They can actually go ahead and just beat the Patriots next week in Foxborough and have a decision to make. If they have a chance to move up in the seeding, then certainly they'll go out there and compete for it. But if they don't, if it's just set, like the Broncos just beat the Bengals and the Chargers can't move up, then they can have a conversation about potentially resting up and going for the Bills, because the Chargers, they're far from the healthiest team in football. Like you pull up their depth chart, I mean, they have a lot of guys in IR, just like teams do, but they got guys questionable. Herbert's questionable, Disley, Zion Johnson, that's three starters on the offense. And then the defense, one of their nose tackles, Agbania, questionable, Perryman's questionable, probably their better linebacker. I mean, Khalil Mack, is a linebacker, but I don't really count him as a linebacker. Cam Hart, young corner, of course, Elijah Molden, Christian Fulton. There are a lot of questionable players. So it's a Thursday night game too, short week. So of course, it's going to come into question, but it's going to be a big game. This is a huge game, man. Whoever loses this game is going to be in some trouble. But the Chargers, if I'm being honest, they're in less trouble because they have the tiebreaker over the Bengals. So that's something to keep in mind too.